Okay, so they're there for you.
Hi, Anne, Will. Thank you very much for your presentation. I was wondering how you adjust for number of co-authors. Is it straightforward, just divided by number of co-authors, or?
Well, that's now you're picking me up on
Oh.
what. It's dividing the number of citations of the paper by the number of co-authors, and then calculating the H-index based on the number of citations you get. So it's an individual H-index. So it's kind of a single author equivalent H-index. So it's not like looking at the total number of citations and then dividing that by the number of authors. It's looking at the number of citations for each paper. So if you have a combination of single author papers and multiple author papers, and you have a lot of citations for that single author paper, you'll keep all of those citations. But if you have a lot of citations to a paper which has 20 authors, then you need to have many more citations for it to be included in the H-index.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your presentation. In my case, I have a Web of Science and a Scopus H-index, which is about 1/4 of what my Google Scholar H-index is. And I cite both because of the so-called credibility of Web of Science and Scopus, but when I look at the actual citations that all of those sources have, I see why the H-index is so low. They miss more than half of my publications. So it's a great miscarriage of justice, really, for those of us who work in the human sciences. We were talking out in the hall about the incredible care which all of you and your colleagues are dedicating to bibliometrics. For those of us involved in this micro-level peer assessment, it really is the case that we need to turn our attention to the process of peer review, the so-called, subjective process of expert judgment. And we have youngsters in the room, so I won't talk about what we all know about how flawed that process really is. But that's what I would like to see happen next, is that this same kind of rigor that you're all dedicating to bibliometrics, or the dispassionate analysis of research productivity, needs to happen at the level of peer assessment. And you correctly distinguish between this idealized peer assessment. I'd like to know if you've ever seen idealized peer assessment, because in 30 some odd years of being an academic, I have seen nothing approaching, really thorough and careful peer assessment, especially at the institutional level.
True. I've seen it happening for individual papers, but to have it happen at an institutional level.
No, it's interesting. If you look at the book that I mentioned by Derek Sayer, which is a critique of the REF as a process of peer review, I don't really agree with it or not, but what he takes as what he sees as a reasonably good system of peer review is actually the American tenure system. And he argues, I'm not very much experienced with myself, but he argues that in terms of transparency of who's going to be doing it and whether they're an expert or not, and all sorts of things like that, it actually stands as a reasonable model for peer review. Now,
Well, being from North America, let me just say that I think he's misinformed.
Yeah, well, he worked in American universities for a while, which is the opposite of his views, but he argued that when you set up committees, you try to make sure that you've got people on them who are expert in the precise area that's being looked at, and that it's well known who are these people going to be, and everything's open and transparent, which is not the case with the UK REF, where there's all sorts of hidden secrets, nobody knew what was going on, nobody knew who was assessing individuals working in universities and who was making decisions about who was going in and who wasn't.
The records were destroyed afterwards.
Yeah, I mean the REF itself, the panel members were told by the REF committee that when they finished their work, they had to destroy all their notes because the ref committee at HEFCE were worried about being taken to court by individual academics attempting to show that their paper had not been correctly done. So they were all basically told to fix your notes.
No, I'm in the audience, sorry. I have some questions. So it's not a criticism, don't misunderstand. I really enjoyed your paper, but I always see that Google Scholar is compared with to Scopus and to Web of Science. Also, Google Scholar is not a database.
No.
That's, we have to keep that in mind. It's a link collection. It does not provide any metadata, like a database where you can search for, like institutional data, like country. So if you compare here the coverage by field, it's based on individuals. You have a sample.
Yeah.
It's not that you can search for a field. So people are not assigned to any. There are some derivatives like Scolarometer where you try to do that, or ArNetMiner, but ArNetMiner, sorry, I don't want to speak about it. Forget it. It's so hard. It's so poor. Because, and here the problems with the web emerges. So on one hand, for instance, if I look at my personal data in Scholar, in the Google Scholar, I find a lot of noise, non-academic stuff that is cited. I would like to get rid of that, but it's still distorting my statistics. So pages of websites that are cited, they have never been intended to, or reports, commissioned reports. I don't want that they are cited. They are not academic work, actually, or my university script, for instance. It's all in the system. It's inflating, of course. It's social sciences actually. It's inflating my social sciences part. So we have to take it with a pinch of salt.
True.
So there is more rigor in Scopus and Web of Science. They have their rules. They select their journals and proceedings and books. And we all know it. It's a university. It's a closed universe. It's a closed universe. We know that. We know all about the limitations. We know about the bias in the coverage.
I wouldn't agree there. Well, you know the limitations. I know the limitations. John knows the limitations. Part of the audience does, but most of the public doesn't.
Okay, yeah, I confess, but the truth, you can know it, but if you look at Google Scholar, even if you're an expert, you cannot know it.
True. But I mean, talking about the public doesn't know. My deputy vice chancellor research, who was in the life sciences, had no idea. He kept saying like, "Oh, but your faculty is underperforming because you don't publish enough. Your work doesn't get cited enough. You need to double your research." But look at the medical faculty; they're doing much better.
Yeah.
So it's educating the public about the
That's correct. I mean, Google Scholar is still an excellent retrieval tool, so I cannot imagine better because you find everything, literally everything. But we have to, but the statistics have to be taken as a
absolutely. And I think really, and we talked about that in the car even. I think it's like Google Scholar, I would say, has maybe 85–90% accuracy. For my record, it's more than that, but depending on the individual. But it has 90–95% coverage. The Web of Science Scopus has 99% accuracy, for my record, but it has 20 or 30% coverage. As a social science academic, I prefer the lack of accuracy over better coverage. As a life science academic, you might have a different point of view.
You know, if I can, the fact that Web of Science has, for the social sciences or Scopus, 20 to 30% coverage is damnable. It is absolutely an inaccurate source of information about citation rates for social sciences. So to say that we should first criticize Google Scholar because it has false hits, okay, it has false hits, but Web of Science and Scopus misses true hits substantially. That is the bigger concern. It misses a substantial number of true hits. And it is absolutely the case that while experts understand the strengths and limitations of each sort, when you say the general public, you mean department chairs, deans, and university presidents, as well as review committees for grant publications. So Web of Science and Scopus actually do a grave injustice to social scientists, and in my opinion, should not be used for the social sciences and humanities.
But I think we need both. I mean, we need, that's why I love the three presentations, because they're perfectly complementary. I come at it as a social science academic, as an amateur bibliometrician who wants to democratize citation analysis. We need the scientometrics experts to tell us about the limitations of these analyses, to tell us about the need for accuracy. So we need both, but there will always be a tension.
I was going to just say that one of the advantages of the H-index is that it is more robust than other indicators to the poor quality of data in Google Scholar, because it only looks at the top publications of a person, which Google Scholar will get right in the name. It misses out on all the rubbish down the bottom, which are mistakes and general things which have small numbers of citations. So H-index with Google Scholar, I think, is a good combination.
This is a point. We come always back to the individual level. So if we talk about Google Scholar, it's always proceeding from the individual level. So if you have a task, for instance, if you would like to compare research performance, say, I take an example from the sciences, but it could be also an example from the social sciences. But for instance, if you have to compare research performance of a country, research in inorganic and analytical chemistry, for instance, of a country with that of other countries, you cannot do that with Google Scholar at all. It's not possible. The problem is, of course, if it comes, of course, we have to make a distinction, because we have obviously, I hear it at my university, Wolfgang, use Google Scholar at the national level. It cannot be done. We don't understand that. You cannot assign individual items, I would not say articles, because it's books, it is everything. You find even presentation, PowerPoint presentations, if they are cited, you find them back in Google Scholar. You cannot assign them to affiliation, to institutions, to countries, just to others. That's really a point. That is one thing you have to keep in mind if you use Google Scholar. You have to go back, you have to draw a sample, as you have done, based on individuals, and then you can say, okay, these individuals can be associated with a field, with an institution, with a country, and so on. And then you can say, yeah, I can conduct even a large-scale analysis. But the problem to use the complete system for a breakdown by fields, by countries, by whatsoever is not possible. And that's the problem with Google Scholar. We have to stress that. It's not a criticism, but it's a feature.
But I think that is a major issue for bibliometricians, but it's not an issue for the individual academic, because 99% of the individual academics are only interested in themselves and maybe one or two of their colleagues. But I do. And the problem is, as you say, Google Scholar is not a bibliometric database. You have data on the author, you have data on the year of publication, not always correct, but largely correct. You have data on the journal, but that's it. You don't know the country, you don't know the affiliation. If I may just take you up on one point, and I do accept the critique, but I also want to put another point of view to it as well. The rubbish, there's lots of rubbish, you should call noise. I think noise is
noise. I said noise.
No. Someone else said rubbish, I think. So there's a lot of noise in Google Scholar. But then again, if you've written a report, as you said, I've written a report for a government department or whatever, and that is cited by individual academics, to me that report has had an impact. I don't care that it's not an academic publication. I'm not going to value it as highly as an academic publication, but if many people have found that useful, communication and have
Right.
cited it, I think that's a valid way to measure impact.
Yes, you're right, but the question arises, of course, it's not research output. It's not intended as research. It might also be redundant because it's not original research. So if the task is to evaluate original scientific research, then it is not.
But then you don't look at it as publication, but you might look at the citations.
It might have an impact, of
Yeah,
course. It
the
might have.
citations it generates.
And then we have also some, these are not technical problems, these are essential problems, for instance, coping with books. You mentioned one, that chapters are considered individual publications. It's true if it comes to edited books, then most chapters have different orders.
Yeah.
You can consider them like individual papers, and they are cited separately. And this is one of the main errors, not only in Google Scholar, also in Web of Science, in the book citation index, for instance, that I have an edited book jointly with Henk Muth and Uli Schmoch. We have published in 2004. And most citations to the individual chapters written by other scientists are assigned to me and to Henk and to Uli. And this is a mistake. That's a false positive, and false positives are very dangerous. This is one point. Then if we deal with book, we have the problem that we have different editions, we have translations. When can be a book, a second essentially improved edition be considered a new product? I'm not sure. And then we have also a problem with some fields in the social sciences and humanities, like law. The borderline between research and other types of different publications goes within the same journal sometimes.
Yeah, true.
So it's very difficult to distinguish between service and research. So that's a general question. It cannot be solved by using databases. This is a more sophisticated question.
But again, looking back at your figure with the two triangles,
Yeah.
I mean, some of the problems are more important if you look at it from a bibliometrics information science point of view, and other problems are more important if you look at it from a research evaluation perspective. But most people don't seem to be able to make that distinction. That's unfortunate.
Could you elaborate about the gender bias correction that the HLA index seems to do?
Sorry, can you repeat?
If I understood
gender
you,
bias, yeah?
if I understood you correctly,
Yeah.
the HLA index corrects the gender bias that appears in the with the other
Yes.
indices. Could you elaborate on that? Is because humanities are more associated to women, and then
I mean, even for the H index,
right.
there was no significant difference between female and male academics. But because the female academics, we wanted to have one male, one female in each individual subdiscipline, but obviously some subdisciplines didn't have female academics, and some subdisciplines didn't have male academics. And because the subdisciplines that didn't have male academics were typically the humanities, and subdisciplines that didn't have female academics were typically the sciences. So by correcting for co-authors, that small, non-significant difference became even less significant if you correct it for disciplinary differences. But overall, we didn't find significant differences between the two genders in terms of research performance.
May I add something? Once we conducted the study, it was an internal study, of course. We cannot publish it because it was really based on individual scientists. It was a gender study, and it was quite interesting to see, and also you have to see how to deal and how to interpret this bibliometric indicators. But we found that women are less productive, but receive more citations.
That's
Even-
interesting.
Yeah, but then we looked at, they are more active, for instance, in the life sciences. They are less active in engineering. And that means actually, if you normalize their citation impact by the field standard, then females and males have the same standard.
Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah,
So you have to be very careful how you interpret it. So because it was also, for instance, in humanities, in some of the fields like humanities, theology, for instance, so you don't, so they are underrepresented. Females are underrepresented, for instance. In other fields they are overrepresented a bit. And if you have to put it in a perspective. So bibliometrics can be very misleading if it is not properly interpreted. So this is always my warning. So people are saying, yeah, Wolfgang, you are doing bibliometrics all the day for 30 years already, or even more, but we are so critical with bibliometrics. You have to, and that's the reason why I address all these issues around Scopus, Google Scholars, and databases. You have to.
Is there any effort being made to look at things like scope of work or complexity of work, and maybe using manuscript length as a proxy for those things as you adjust for co-authorships?
I think in economics there's been some work to, I seem to recall that there is a journal, they evaluate journal publications based on the number of page equivalents of the leading journal. So they look at the number of pages a regular article is in the leading journal and then recalculate it. But it's very messy and very time consuming to do that.
There was a recent study, this is a study, you can take it how you will, done, which was commented on in Science, actually, the journal. It was a very large-scale survey of something like 800,000 papers. And what they were looking at was whether there was an influence on the length of the title. And they claimed to find a statistically significant effect, which was the shorter the title, the more citations it got.
I'm not sure whether the same is true for the length of the article. But
So,
Well, my colleagues who are historians, argue with me all the time that while they may write one book every 4 or 5 years, their total page output actually far exceeds mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then if you correct it for the number of authors, it will also, because it's probably a single author book as well.
Oh,